Welcome to another edition of TOCA Backstage. This is Chris Wolf, the Executive Director of the Torrance Cultural Arts Foundation. It is my honor to have Abbie Gardner here, who is the opening performer for our Studio Cabaret series on Friday and Saturday, October 18th and 19th. So make sure you get your tickets and enjoy. And also don't forget to get your dinner tickets from Red Car Brewery. But Abbie, it's great to have you. Thank you so much for making the time.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
So I'm really curious. I've gotten to know a little bit about your music, and actually how I found you is a whole different story. But
yeah,
your style of guitar playing is it? I know it's slide, but I saw one review that says not only a first-rate Dobro player, but a songwriter to be reckoned with.
Yeah.
Dobro is the style, or is that the guitar?
Yeah, it's a little of both, actually. Any guitar that has, actually, this is convenient. Any guitar that has this resonator cone in it, like that hubcap looking thing, could kind of conventionally be called a Dobro, even though Dobro is a brand name. So it's really a resonator guitar. But the people that play it lap style are usually the ones that call it Dobro more often than others.
And that was the other thing too, is your style of guitar playing. It's not like people are used to. It's like you're not going to get up there and strum it. It is sort of. I mean, most slide guitar players I've seen, they have like a little table or they have like stands on a guitar. Yours is actually around your neck and on your hips, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
How did?
Yeah, it's sort of. It comes from like the bluegrass world, basically. That's where I learned, the tuning that I use, which is an open G tuning, and the fact that I play with a little slide bar instead of pressing the strings down to the neck. I just use the slide, kind of like a lap steel player, like you're talking about. But it's kind of a crossover. It's used more in like country music and bluegrass, usually as a side instrument to complement a band. But because I also come from the singer-songwriter world, I'm kind of combining those two things together and being my own side person to my own songs. So it's really fun. It's a kind of a challenge to back myself up, because the tuning is a little challenging. You can't just like strum chords really normally like a guitar. It doesn't have the same voicing, but I'm finding ways around that. So,
what inspired you to get into the slide guitar?
I just always loved the sound of it growing up, listening to like Jerry Douglas and Bonnie Raitt and all the like old blues guys, I've always just loved that sound.
And I totally find it fascinating, because I actually had a friend who is a blues guitar player, and he actually started doing slide only because he had a stroke and he couldn't do the frets. Right. But it's an amazing sound, and it's awesome to watch. And I'm really curious, or I'm anxious for our audience to see you play this style, because I don't think they have seen it before. It's not a common thing, is it?
No, definitely not. Like I said, you might see it here and there in a bluegrass band, but it's not even like one of the core instruments in that. And it's pretty challenging to play slide, like this kind of slide. You never touch, you never make a chord with your fingers.
Right.
So it's really, you have to, the intonation is different. It's a lot more challenging in that way.
And how did you stumble upon songwriting?
I started writing songs as soon as I started playing guitar, right after college. I went to school for occupational therapy, and then I just started playing guitar right out after college. And as soon as I learned one E7 chord, it's like two fingers, the easiest chord, but it sounds good, Yeah. I started writing songs with just that.
One chord songs?
Yeah, pretty much, blues all the way. But I had a really bad hand position, actually, with guitar. So that's what led me to play lap style dobro. And I'm so glad that it did, because a lot of people come to Dobro after an injury or arthritis, or some people are even, they're missing fingers or something like that. And it's kind of like this instrument that takes everybody. I mean, I know that I could just, no matter what happens to my hand, I could probably still play Dobro, which is good.
That's awesome. Well, and I'm curious, you said you went to college for occupational therapy, but then you picked up the guitar, and I'm assuming you stopped trying to be an occupational therapist?
Eventually. I mean, I grew up in a family of musicians going back many generations. So I actually grew up playing classical flute, and I thought that was going to be my life. But I didn't get into music school. It turns out, the perfection of classical music was not my strong suit. Songwriting is more forgiving. So, my stint into a health profession was sort of a rebellion in my family. I was even fed for a little bit just to really stick it to my parents. But then I came back to it. I knew I always wanted to be a musician. It just changed forms over the years.
That's funny. Usually it's people become musicians despite their parents.
I know. It's a little backwards in my family.
Well, that's good, though. That's good, because now we have a great show coming up. And you have, I'm also curious because you have not only your solo show, which you're doing for us, but you also have a group, or actually, I've seen online that you play with a number of different groups. Tell me about your group. How did that form?
Yeah, the band is called Red Molly, and we formed back in 2004 at a folk festival. And we're really centered around the harmony vocals. And we've been going strong for so many years that a few years ago we took a little break, and that's when I started playing solo more. And now we're back, but we're kind of part-time. We're doing about 2 months out of the year just to keep things super fresh. And we got a bass player and a drummer to back us up. We're still focused on the harmonies, but we're writing a lot more songs. And so it's nice to have that balance, because when I tour with them, I'm like, oh, this is great. I don't have to worry about the rhythm. I can just play lead, harmonize, sing my songs, but also back up other people, which is a joy for me. But then just when I'm getting a little tired of that, I get to go off and do my own shows and get that challenge. Like, oh, this is fun. Now I can, if I feel like extending the song for, 3 minutes into this crazy solo, I can do it. But once I get bored of that, it's time to go back out with Red Molly. So
that's
really
great.
Nice.
Yeah, most people don't get that opportunity. I think that's awesome to have that diversity in your career.
I think it's a strength too, because the band will do more like festival stuff, and I'll do more intimate, like inside venues, and it's nice.
That is nice. Yeah. And so when you became a musician, what was the ultimate goal? Was it just to, because I'm assuming when you first wrote your first song, it was with a chord.
Yeah.
How did you stumble into slide?
Yeah, I mean, I just love the sound of it. Even before I played guitar at all, I just love the sound, especially Jerry Douglas, going to bluegrass festivals and stuff like that, seeing that growing up. But yeah, the switching to lap style slide was really because my hand hurt. I couldn't play guitar anymore. I was having really bad problems, like nerve problems. Oh. And when you extend your wrist when you're playing lap style like this, it just gives your fingers a lot more mechanical strength and puts less pressure on them. So, and I learned that from occupational therapy. So it's weird how my worlds collide.
Sometimes it's just kismet. It was meant to be.
Yeah, I think so.
So, and your style of music, have you always you definitely have a distinct style. How did you come across that? I mean, have you tried like the pop rock way, or did?
I've always been pretty rooted in like acoustic music. I was in a bar band for a while, but just the amount of noise didn't really suit me. I like crowds that listen, back then you could smoke in bars, so that was another reason I didn't wasn't into it. But yeah, I think it's a combination of my mother taking us to bluegrass festivals when I was a kid, and that acoustic rootsy thing. But my dad is a jazz Dixieland swing musician, so he played piano and trombone, and he still does, actually. He's 81, and he just put out a new CD this
Awesome.
year. I know, it's amazing. So I get a lot of jazz influenced into my music as well. So I feel like it's sort of rooted in singer-songwriter blues, but then I have this other side of it.
Well, that's the thing is when I was listening to it, I was like, little Americana, little. It was hard to say this is the style of music that you do. So
Right.
I was kind of like, how would you just if somebody said what kind of music do you play? How would you describe it? Just
Right. If I was meeting one of my neighbors or something, I would probably say acoustic music. Yeah, sometimes I use the word Americana, but a lot of lay people don't really know what that means.
yeah.
So
Well,
I would say acoustic singer-songwriter, but with slide guitar.
perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like even with when somebody says jazz, it's
Yeah.
I challenge anybody to say this is jazz. There is no one specific style
Right.
of jazz. It's like
Exactly.
Americana. Americana is similar. It's like you
Yeah.
can call a lot of different things Americana.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not quite as specific as like bluegrass has a very specific sound and like chords and melodic range to it. But when I think of jazz, I think of more like chromatic movement and more variety in the chord structure. And sometimes the melodies are more adventurous, you know. But I
Yeah.
think whatever I play, it ends up sounding like blues. All the jazz tunes that I write or pick, I tend to lean on the bluesy ones. And the same thing with like if I cover a Tim O'Brien song or a bluegrass thing, I tend to make it more bluesy.
Well, that's good. We like the blues.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
So when people, I mean, as a singer songwriter, I imagine you are trying to not necessarily send a message, but convey a feeling or maybe even a message depending on the song.
Yeah.
What do you hope people walk away from your concerts with? Is there a feeling, a message?
I don't have a specific message that's overarching in my whole show, but I'm hoping to get people to have a little break from lives, you know, just be taken somewhere and feel something, whether it's knowing that they're not alone. If they connect with one of the feelings from my song, if it's, you know, sadness or who knows. But maybe they just feel less alone, or they're just like getting a break from what they usually think about and diving into the stories in my songs. I'm hoping to just, you know, really entertain people and hopefully bring them together. There's not a lot of divisiveness in my songwriting.
That'll be nice. A nice change of
Yeah,
pace from social media.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I think there's a place for that for sure, but for some reason it hasn't gotten into my songwriting. So, you know, when I have one song about a soldier. It's called The Mind of a Soldier, but it's taken from the perspective of a woman trying to connect with her soldier in her life. So I always take the more emotional side of things, and that seems to work for me.
Great. Well, I have a feeling you'll enjoy our audience. They are good listeners, and they love it when they love to get to know the artist on
Nice.
stage. So
Uh-huh.
they love the banter, and don't be surprised if you ask a question, if they answer it, because
Okay,
they are
good.
vocal.
Oh, I
They're
like
actually a
that.
good group. They're a good group.
Great.
So yeah, our cabaret space is really intimate.
Mm-hmm.
It's like no more than 100 people,
Great.
and there is food and drink, but no service. So they'll be sitting there paying attention, just waiting for you to entertain them, which I know you will.
Perfect.
Um, so you live in, correct me if I'm wrong, is it Texas?
No, Jersey City, New Jersey.
Oh, boy, I was way off. I don't know where I was thinking. Maybe because how I found you was really funny. I have friends, Bettman and Halpin, who
Oh,
yeah, and they had posted a thing saying that they had gone to see your show and they posted some ranting and raving review of it. And I go,
yeah.
okay, well, I got to check this out then if they like it, because they're the sweetest people in the world.
Right.
And then I kind of went down the rabbit hole of your videos on YouTube and your music, and I said, okay, we have to have her come in. So
Yeah.
that was how I discovered
Oh,
you.
that's so great. Yeah, they did a concert in my neighborhood, and then I did a concert. You know, we it was kind of back to back. They came to one of mine, and then I was like, "Well, where are you guys staying? You should just come stay with us." So they stayed with us for a day or so, and yeah, just sweet people.
Yeah.
So I'll have to
Yeah,
thank them for that.
they've done our cabaret before, and I'm hoping to get them back at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love hanging out with them. But that's why I thought you were more west, was because
Right.
the show that you were in, I think, was west. Well, how's Jersey?
It's good. It's a little hot right now. We're expecting 99 degrees today and 100 tomorrow.
Yikes! Yeah,
I know.
California's no better right now.
Yeah.
So one of the missions of the foundation is also to encourage and sort of mentor and help young artists get their start. If you were to sit down with a young singer-songwriter, because we do have several who are very passionate. I mean, kids. We have a thing that we do, South Bay's Got Talent, where we have, a competition, and some of these kids write these just amazing songs.
Right.
What words of advice would you give somebody?
I would tell them to keep going towards whatever gives them the most energy back. Basically, like, if they love to sing, just dive really far into that. There a lot of times we try to make ourselves do things we think we should do, and like, oh, I should know how to do opera, or I should know how to whatever. I need to read music to be able to write music. It's not necessarily true. I would just keep trying to follow, what excites you and what makes your heart happy, because it can quickly turn into a business, and that's great sometimes, but even then, it can get a little cloudy as to where your North Star is. So I would still suggest a lot of practicing, using a metronome. I'm big on using the metronome. I'm actually teaching a class about that next week. But, and doing all of that stuff, but at the same time, always knowing why you're doing it, why you're writing the songs you're writing, and why you're practicing and playing guitar. What does it give back to you, and make sure it, gives something back to you. Because sometimes I have lots of friends and colleagues that just need to take a break from it and remind themselves why they got into it in the first place.
Yeah, it's funny. I asked this question of all the performers, and that seems to be the one continuing thread: is follow your heart, follow your passion, because at the end of the day, you need something that's going to fulfill you and make you happy.
Right. Yeah.
And it's funny. I think I've said this before in this podcast, but there was a group that I was trying to help and encourage, and I said, so what's your long-term goal? And they say, oh, I want to win a Grammy. It's like, well, that's not a goal. And that's not going to get you very far, because that's, at the end of the day, that's not a reward that you should be after. Follow your passion.
It's good to have, kind of tiers of your goals. Like, that can be up here, but like, what's all this other stuff?
Yeah, exactly. Playing bars, I don't, quite frankly, my hat goes off to all musicians, because I don't know how you guys do it. It's, sometimes it's a very thankless task, and it's, But I imagine that's one of the other reasons why it has to be personally rewarding for you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot easier ways to make a living, have a life, pay your mortgage, all that stuff. And sometimes, the best musicians I know will take the financial thing out of it so they can keep it as a rewarding artistic endeavor. A lot of times. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like having a day job that supports and your art and keeps it alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of super talented people out there who do just that, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as it's fulfilling yourself.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a blast. I really do appreciate your taking the time.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris.
Just as a reminder, Abbie will be at the Studio Cabaret at the Nakano Theater Friday and Saturday, October 18th and 19th. And you can tell I'm reading my little cheat note over here. But yeah, it's going to be a blast. We're looking forward to it. And I know the audience is going to love you when they see you.
Awesome. I can't wait.
Well, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks,
Bye.
guys.